Okay, so we got a really interesting one you guys sent in a YouTube conversation between Jack from toofluency.com
Right.
and Kate about all things work and time off.
Yeah.
So we're going to be doing a deep dive on that today, looking at their different work histories
Yeah.
and their views on work-life balance.
Absolutely.
And also their different backgrounds.
Yes.
Jack being British and Kate being American.
Yeah, it's fascinating to look at how those early work experiences really highlight some fundamental cultural differences. And I think just starting with their first jobs, we see those differences kind of laid out.
Right. Yeah, so let's start with Kate's first jobs.
Okay.
She mentioned babysitting
Yeah.
and getting certified for that around the age of 12.
Wow.
And then at 15, working at a sailing school.
Okay.
And this is something that she pointed out is pretty common in the U.S. because of those longer summer breaks.
Right.
So, she says she started off just helping with the boats, people renting kayaks and sailboats.
Yeah.
And then eventually became a sailing instructor.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So, I think that really reflects the emphasis in American culture on teenagers getting work experience during those long summer breaks, fostering responsibility or earning some spending money.
Right.
All that. So.
And then Jack, on the other hand, had a paper round as his first job.
Okay.
Which he thinks is much less common now
Okay.
in the UK for young people.
Yeah.
He started this around 12 or 13. Bringing in around £9 a week.
Okay.
Now, for those of you in the U.S. who don't know what a paper round is,
Right.
it involves delivering newspapers to people's homes.
Okay.
And he said his first route was fairly easy, about 25 houses. And he would just carry the papers in a bag. Later on, he got a more demanding route.
Right. That he had to do on his bike.
Okay.
And he was saying that bag got pretty heavy, especially on Saturdays when we've got the extra magazines.
Right.
And for that, he got paid a little bit more.
Okay.
Around £14.
Okay. So it's interesting to
Consider the contrast there. Yeah. The paper round seems very independent, solitary versus Kate's work.
Yeah.
Working with people at the sailing school.
Right. Yeah. Being part of a team.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then he also mentioned a milk round.
What?
Yeah, a milk round, which he said, most people our age in the U.S.
probably
have no idea what that is.
I have no idea what that is.
Yeah, so imagine delivering milk in glass bottles to doorsteps.
Oh, wow.
Early in the morning.
Okay.
He thinks it was on the back of a milk van.
Okay.
In the middle of winter.
Oh, no.
Yeah, getting picked up at 5 a.m.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
2-hour route.
Oh.
Run the milk to the door, grab the empty bottles.
Yeah.
Put it back in the crate.
Wow.
Yeah. So he only lasted a few weeks because it was so cold.
Yeah.
And because he was taller than his friend who also did it.
Right.
He said his head stuck out of the top of the van.
Oh, my goodness.
5 a.m.
Wow.
Freezing cold.
Yeah.
Freezing cold, hopping off the back of a milk van.
That sounds incredibly physically demanding. And as Kate pointed out, potentially quite dangerous. It just highlights how much the landscape of teenage employment has changed in such a short time.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And speaking of dangerous situations, Jack then described his most dangerous job.
Okay.
Which was working at a golf driving range.
Okay.
When he was about 15. So initially, the new guys would have to collect the golf balls.
Right.
By stabbing them with a tube.
Okay.
And walking around the range.
Okay.
And this was during peak hours.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And all they were given were motorcycle helmets.
Oh, my gosh.
Which just made them targets.
Oh.
Yeah. So he was saying people would literally aim for them.
Wow.
And he would get hit in the back and legs.
Oh, my gosh.
By golf balls.
Oh, my gosh.
In the dark.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is, before there were all the stricter health and safety measures.
Yeah, that's...
Yeah. So pretty unbelievable that they did that.
Right.
But thankfully, that job did improve for him eventually. He ended up only working on Sundays when it was quieter.
Okay.
And they had a buggy that they would use to collect the balls.
Right.
He called it a quad or dune buggy.
Okay.
With a collector on the front.
Right.
So that was a lot better.
Right.
And he even got to practice his golf.
Oh, nice.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's unimaginable by today's standards.
Yeah.
The lack of safety precautions, it's striking.
Yeah.
Makes you appreciate what they're doing, how regulations have developed to protect workers.
Absolutely, yeah.
Especially young workers.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
On the other hand, Kate's jobs after the sailing school were mainly in teaching.
Okay.
So she's been an ESL teacher.
Right.
Broad and online.
Yeah.
And she's also taught English language arts to American students in public schools.
Right.
And she's about to become an assistant teacher.
Okay.
It seems like teaching has been a consistent theme.
Yeah, it seems like she's found something she loves and is good at.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how their career paths really diverged after those early teenage experiences. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. They also both share the experience of teaching English in Spain.
Oh,
which they both feel played a role in leading them to their current work.
Okay.
And while Kate mostly focused on her studies in college, and being captain of the sailing club, and doing some freelance editing, Jack had a wider variety of jobs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so he mentioned being a marketing manager for a couple of years, working in call centers, and bars, and even a stint at a student union nightclub.
Oh, wow.
Which he didn't enjoy much because he said it was a very, very drunk environment.
Right.
And he was sober.
Yeah, I can imagine that wouldn't be the most enjoyable atmosphere. It is striking how his work history is so varied.
Yeah.
He was exposed to so many different work cultures and challenges versus Kate, who had that very direct path to her chosen profession.
Yeah, and then there was a story about him working as a porter in a hospital.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so he said that hospital porters sometimes get called in if patients become aggressive.
Right.
Yeah, and he remembered one instance with this gym goer who threatened to put needles in his eyes.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
And then the very next day, at the gym, she acted like they were the best of friends.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
that's...
Yeah, he's had some interesting experiences.
Yeah, that really underscores the unpredictable nature of some jobs.
Yeah.
And just the diverse situations that people can encounter in the workplace.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So moving on to dream jobs.
Okay.
Jack said that his ultimate dream job, even though he enjoys what he's doing now, would be a football manager or soccer manager for some of us.
Right.
And he said this passion stems from playing management simulation computer games when he was growing up. And he said he loves the sport, the strategic problem-solving aspect, the player management, and the overall goal of achieving success.
Right. It's always fascinating to see how those childhood interests really influence our career aspirations, even if they don't necessarily become our reality.
Yeah.
And the things that he enjoys in that game, like the strategy, the management, the competition, I think those probably reflect some underlying drivers in his personality.
Yeah, absolutely. Kate, on the other hand, feels like she's already doing her dream job.
Oh, okay.
In a lot of ways. Because she loves teaching and working with children.
Yeah.
However, she would like to dedicate more time to her writing.
Okay.
And achieve professional recognition as an author.
Right. So she's looking to grow and develop in new ways, which I think a lot of people can relate to.
Yeah.
You know, you find fulfillment in your current work.
Yeah.
But there's still that desire for something more.
Yeah, for sure.
Or something different. Yeah.
Yeah. So now let's move on to a really significant point of contrast that they brought up, which was time off and work culture.
Yeah.
Specifically the differences between the U.S. and the U.K.
Right.
So Camp mentioned that in the U.S., the average full-time job often comes with around 10 days of paid time off per year.
Okay.
And that doesn't even include the few national holidays.
Right.
And she highlighted how easily those days can get used up.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's for yourself or a family member. She said she wasn't even entirely sure about dedicated sick days.
Right.
It really depends on the company's policies.
Yeah.
So that limited amount of paying time off really reflects you know, different priorities when it comes to leisure versus productivity.
All right.
And that probably has historical and economic underpinnings.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it can create huge pressure on individuals and families. Trying to navigate work and personal life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
In sharp contrast, Jack recalled that in the UK, the standard was around 28 days of paid leave annually.
Yeah.
And that could even be more, depending on how many days a week someone worked.
Right.
So he calculated it to be closer to 5 weeks and 3 days.
Wow.
He remembers having to plan his leave well in advance when he was a marketing manager to make sure he could get time off for events like the World Cup
Yeah.
and the Leeds Festival.
Okay.
He also mentioned that some factories even have mandatory shutdowns between Christmas and New Year.
Right.
So everyone gets that time off.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big difference.
Huge. Yeah.
It reflects a different cultural value, you know, prioritizing well-being.
Yeah.
Having regular breaks from work.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
They also touched on the idea that, taking time off probably contributes to overall productivity.
Right.
Jack felt that for him personally, taking short breaks during the workday was also really important.
Yeah.
Things like getting up from his computer.
Yeah.
And having tea breaks, which he described as a very British example of a little reward.
Yeah.
During the day.
Yeah. So it's not just about the total amount of time off, but also that rhythm and the culture of taking breaks throughout the day, which can have a big impact on your focus, preventing burnout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kate also mentioned that she misses the workplace camaraderie.
Okay.
Now that she works more independently.
Right.
You know, those little shared moments, jokes you have with colleagues.
Right. I think that's something that's often underestimated.
Yeah.
But so important for job satisfaction and well-being.
Right. Those informal interactions can be just as important as the formal tasks.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to bring it all together, the real takeaways here are those interesting contrasts in early job experiences.
Right.
You know, the more solitary nature of Jack's paper round compared to the more team-focused environment at the sailing school.
Yeah.
And then that really significant difference in how time off is approached between the American and British perspectives that they shared.
Yeah, it really highlights how cultural norms and even regulations really shape our experiences of work from a very young age.
Yeah, for sure.
I thought this conversation was just so fascinating in terms of highlighting those different priorities and expectations around work-life balance in these two times. Different countries?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for you listening, as you consider those different approaches to work and time off, what aspects really resonate with your own experiences? And what do you see as the potential benefits or drawbacks of each of these systems? It's definitely something worth pondering.
Absolutely.
You know, as we all try to find that balance between work and life.
For sure.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
See you next time.